All right, so we are back at the Edina Advice Givers podcast, and we are here today with Andrew Beaton, Andy, right?
I go by Andy, that's fine, yep.
Yep, the principal of Edina High School. And let me tell you, I am so honored to be able to sit down with Andy today because not only is Edina one of the top schools, if not the top school in the state of Minnesota, but it's also coveted for everything that it does with its students, its faculty, and its community. So today we get to talk with Andy about all the questions that maybe you as a parent thinking about relocating, or maybe you're coming from a different state and you're trying to figure out what school is the best school for me to send my kids to. And we all know your kid is your prized possession. You're the most important thing in your life. And so finding a school is almost more important than finding a home. And me being in real estate, which you all know, I know a lot about families relocating and trying to find that perfect home. And I know how emotional and how important that is. But finding the right school is more important. Wouldn't you agree, Andy?
I think a lot of families do choose where they live based on the school system. So I think probably in that decision beyond just, how many bedrooms or bathrooms that you have, it's like, will my child have a good experience growing up? Will they be prepared for the next level and successful going forward?
Yeah. So why don't we start with your background? Sure. I mean, everybody wants to know, well, if Andy's the principal, how did he get started?
I have been here for 2 years in Edina. Previous to that, I was the principal at Bloomington Kennedy High School for 7 years, which is a neighboring community, great people. Before that, I was the principal at Columbia Heights High School. Again, outstanding community. There's so many great communities in the Twin Cities area. So this is my 12th year as a lead principal. 3 different communities. Before that, I was a dean and then also a teacher in the Robbinsdale School District. I was a social studies teacher, high school soccer coach for many years. So it's been a great path to be able to get here, and I certainly am excited to talk with you today about Edina. It's an amazing place.
Well, you know what? I mean, I think as a parent myself, the real question is, how do you become a principal at Edina High School? I mean, does Edina pick you, or did you pick Edina?
Well, again, this could be a long answer. Right. In terms of the journey, how I got here, I was a high school social studies teacher, soccer coach, I was a teacher leader at the beginning of my career. So I was like a area leader in my departments, ended up doing a lot of curriculum work in the Robbinsdale schools. So I really liked the job. I liked working with kids. I always have. I was given an opportunity in Robbinsdale to be a dean, essentially, at a middle school. So I got a middle school experience, and then as I kind of build my competency and gained more responsibilities, I think it was just a time to be able to try an administrative position. So that's when I went out to Columbia Heights, was an assistant principal there, and then became principal there. And then Bloomington saw the work that I was doing in Columbia Heights. They reached out to me and asked me to come out to that position, and I was fortunate to get that job at Kennedy, and we did a lot of great work at Kennedy and really transformed a lot of the practices that we had around student achievement and the achievement gap and intervention. And I actually had done some work in Edina as the principal at Kennedy High School. So I had come here to do some professional development for principals and their cabinet here based on some of the work I had done in Bloomington. So when this position came open, I wasn't looking per se. I liked my job in Bloomington, the things that we had built. The superintendent reached out to me and made a pretty good sell about the opportunities here. And I think the exciting part for me professionally coming here was under construction and transforming the physical space. The fact that we were adding 9th grade to the high school. So last year was the first year that we had 9th grade at the high school. We had a new schedule that was built. And so with 50% of the students being new, a new schedule, construction, 25% new staff at the high school, I think I was hired to help move that forward and move the building into this new era, kind of next generation for Edina High School.
Well, it sounds like everyone was new and you were new, so it's perfect, right?
That's right.
You get lost in transition. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So as a newer principal, because you've only been with Edina for 2 years, what are some of the key principles that you're trying to instill within the school and the children and the faculty?
Well, one of the things that I did when I was hired is even before I was on the job, Bloomington was gracious in giving me time to come here to Edina, and I did a lot of stakeholder meetings with students, with parents, with staff to really get a sense of what they loved about Edina High School, that they would never change, what are some things that they would like to see changed at Edina High School, what were their expectations of me as the next principal of the high school. So I really gathered a lot of data. You know, you have sort of that hard data that you have there about test scores and things like that, but it was really more qualitative data about how people feel about the place. And ultimately, I've always felt successful schools are mostly about culture, about what the dynamic is, the adult culture, the student culture. So basically, I've approached this job kind of in two prongs. One is on one side of this yin-yang that is a tradition of incredible excellence in this community that has been here for a very long time. Values around academic performance, values around being involved in the arts, values around extracurricular activities. Those are core values that will never change at Edina High School, and certainly not as long as I'm here. Those things will never change. But at the same time, your best organizations also are looking for ways to improve. So I'm also here on this other side to say, how do we stimulate progress? How do we have our learning be more personalized for students? How do we have high expectations, but also have safety net programs for students when they are struggling? How do you lessen anxiety of high-performing students to help them feel like they can get there, have the right mindset, be willing to ask for help? So that's the stimulating progress, the work that we've done in the last just year and a half now, that there's been incredible change, not pushing away all those traditions that we have around excellence, but how do we even get better? How do you take Edina High School, which is a high-performing school, to the next level?
Yeah, that sounds like you got a really clear agenda. That's got to be important when you're leading such a big school. How big is Edina?
We're about 2,750.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a 3-year high school, but we added, a class of 9th graders, just under 700 students to the high school. So we are a good size high school.
Yeah.
So it certainly feels big from a square footage standpoint, but I think once you're in it, and once you're seeing the school operate, it doesn't feel so big to me. Yeah.
So let's pretend that I'm a parent that's coming in from maybe California, right?
Sure.
And I'm trying to figure out what school is the right school for me. One of the biggest things is I feel as a parent that bringing my child to a brand new school where he knows or she knows nobody,
Sure.
What's your position on making my child feel comfortable, role models? Do you connect them with other students that are maybe in upper, maybe a junior or a senior that's going to let them help them fit in? I mean, how do I get my son, or how do I as a parent feel comfortable about my son coming to this new school?
Yep. Well, one of the things I think we did really well last year with adding 9th grade to the high school is we have a pretty strong program called Link Crew. There's this is a national program. A number of schools in the Twin Cities and around the country have it. It's essentially a 9th grade transition program. So we have upperclassmen, juniors and seniors that volunteer their time and are trained to work with incoming 9th grade students. And they work with them in different ways. From a big orientation and kickoff to being excited about coming into the school, to regular push into an advisory program that we have so they can play games, make connections, get advice about the high school experience from an upperclassman perspective. And then even any new student that comes to the high school, like we just had a student that transferred here from a private school just this semester that I just met with a family. They got enrolled. He just started here. And we make those connections through other student leadership organizations. So when that student comes, helping them make a connection to sitting with them at lunch, making connection through clubs and activities and teams. I think that's one of the strongest things about this high school is we have about 90% of our students are involved in some type of activity.
Okay.
So traditional sport, academic team, music, and then even as far out clubs as the Harry Potter Club or the Japanese Anime Club and things like that. The idea is to have everybody feel like they can make a connection with people in some type of affinity group where they can make friends, where the school feels like a great place to be. And that's one of my goals is philosophy of, hard work that feels really good. That's kind of my philosophy for the staff and for the students here. We're going to work really hard, but there's a sense of joy and there's a sense of mindset that you can do it. You can do it. Sometimes you have to ask for help, but you have that efficacy to be able to do it.
Well, I'm a past jock, so I played 3 sports in high school, and juggling academics and also athletics was, I think, difficult, but at the same time rewarding, especially as I've gotten older. It's allowed me to juggle things in the future. What is your take on athletics? Edina, obviously, from an athletic standpoint, is again one of the top schools in the area. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about athletics and students and how it helps them become more well-rounded and more prepared for the future?
Well, as a former athlete and coach myself, I think high school athletics are incredibly important for students to make relationships. Why do you come back for class reunions, 20 years from your graduation date? It's not always to talk about pre-calc. A lot of times it's to talk about relationships, relationships with teachers, relationships with your teammates, your members of the band, whatever that might be. So I think activities, and we try to talk about activities more than just traditional sports, whether you're on the Model UN team, you're in the concert band, or you're on the hockey team. It's a way for you to make a connection back to your school. I also feel like sometimes students that are involved, there's a tipping point, but being involved, I think, is really great for students in terms of their organization and how they use their time. I'd rather have them at hockey practice or Model UN than on Fortnite, or just wasting their time. I'd rather have them doing things that are productive. So I think whatever that is, whether you're an athlete or a non-athlete, there's an opportunity for you to grow as a person through sports, through clubs, through activities, which is critically important, I think, with any child's development.
Well, we were talking before we came on today, and I said that, when I'm talking with parents who are relocating, whether it's within Minnesota or outside Minnesota, and they're coming in and they're looking for new schools, I always advise them that, every parent has different values. And for me to tell you what school's right for you is next to impossible. That I feel like you have to come in and you have to experience the school. So can you give a little bit of insight on what that might be like for a parent that's bringing a child into Edina High School? What kind of experience can they expect within a day of hanging out here at Edina?
Well, I think there's things about Edina that look different than some traditional schools. Every period of the day, you will see students in classrooms, but you'll also see students in different areas of the building. So it has a little bit of a feel of a small college in that way. One of the things that we built through our schedule is time for students to study during the day or have time during the day to be able to catch up on their reading, work with other classmates on an assignment, decompress and have a coffee and talk with your friends. So that's built into the schedule. And we're trying to build capacity with students about how to make good choices on a daily basis. So I could be a junior in high school. I have this period available to me, and I realize that I'm not quite caught up on my reading. So during my student prep period, I'm going to go to this quiet area of the building that's designated and just get my reading done. Another day, I might have just taken a test. I'm just brain fried. I'm going to go to the Commons and get something to eat and just decompress with one of my friends during this open period. Another day, 3 of us might have a project that's coming up next week. We're all busy after school, so we're going to use this time to be able to come together. We use a LCD screen to do a common document and build this presentation that we have to do 2 days from now. So, and that can change daily. So that's the flexibility and the personalization that we're trying to build here.
That sounds like teamwork too, though.
It
I mean,
is,
you're really
yeah.
instilling teamwork. I know when I was going to school back in '96, which was forever ago, there was not that camaraderie and teamwork within a high school. It was like everybody goes and sits in their chair, everybody does their own work, everybody does their own thing, where that sounds like you're trying to instill teamwork and camaraderie. And
I think you'll see even in classrooms, you might have neighboring teachers that share students. So the way our classrooms are designed, they can open up into an extended learning area. So you might have two teachers that teach the same English class. They've done some type of assessment to see kind of where kids stand. They might have really high achieving students that are really ahead, working with a couple of writing center tutors out in an extending learning area. They might say the kids that are really a little bit behind, they're going to go to this teacher's room. The kids that are kind of got a good start are going to be in this teacher's room. So having the flexibility to put kids in different spaces, spend different time, that's really kind of what we're looking for. That's has made Edina a little bit less traditional going forward.
So again, let's get back to that experience. The parent comes in with their child. Obviously, they walk around the school. They get a really unique feeling from the different breakout groups that are going on. What else will that day entail with the parent and the child in the school?
You know, the families that I have come, and I have families that come on a regular basis that come to see our school, I get to tell them about what our philosophy is, why we build the schedule the way we do, the type of interventions and safety nets that are available to them, the resources that we have in student services, if a student is struggling with emotional health, chemical health, the resources that are available, the plans that we put in place when kids come into ninth grade, that they build a 4 or 5 year plan when they start high school about the direction that they're going. And then once they see what's happening in the classroom, it could vary on a daily basis depending on what kind of instruction is going on. They might see kids inside and outside the classroom. They might see kids in a more traditional setting with direct instruction. The teacher might be giving a lecture on that day. Students might be doing a lab in a classroom in lab spaces. So it really does vary. And that's kind of what we're looking for, is really multiple modalities and different ways to teach to reach as many students as possible. So it's not a one size fits all, and our teachers are really strong in being flexible to meet the needs of a lot of different kinds of students.
Will I get a chance to talk with a teacher, or if I have a child that's in activities, whether it's band or theater or athletics, will I get to talk to maybe, a theater person or a coach, or do I get those experiences?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that any family that's interested in coming to Edina High School, all they have to do is contact us. They can meet with me. We do regular tours that are on the schedule through the counseling website. So we have families that come at least twice a month that come and do a group information session and do tours. We do have some shadowing experiences that we're building into that tour process for students to get a sense of what school feels like. Because ultimately, you can look at scores and rankings, and Edina is way up there, but there's a lot of amazing schools around the Twin Cities. It really has to do with feel. What feels right to me as a family, what feels right to my student to be successful.
So I'm going to go into kids with special needs. So I have a daughter that has type 1 diabetes. So obviously I'm familiar with kids with special needs. Obviously there's autism and there's lots of others, depression, and there's lots of things out there. How do you guys handle kids with special needs, and how do you make the parents feel comfortable about, dropping their child off, knowing that, they need a little extra special care at Edina High School?
Well, we have a strong student services department. And depending on the nature of the concern, the disabling condition, whether it's dyslexia to a cognitive issue that a student has, those programs are there. I think ultimately we're looking for that least restrictive environment for students so they can access our courses here. And we might even have students that want to be in a chemistry class, but they, based on their disability, are not necessarily going to be able to do everything that every other student is there. So our teachers are flexible in creating modifications, creating an experience for a student to learn about chemistry, but maybe they have some deficits in their mathematics or behind. So they don't necessarily have to do every piece that's available, but it's about our students making connections to the class and the curriculum. So it really varies, and that's that individualization, personalization that we're going for here. And that's regardless of whether a student has a formal IEP or 504, or a student that is just experiencing something difficult in their lives right now, and having our teachers be responsive to remove any barriers that we possibly can for students to be successful.
The next thing is obviously as a parent that has a child with special needs, I'm dropping them off. There's good days, there's bad days, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm dropping them off today, and it's not a great day, and I know it. And so I'm leaving my child going, gosh, I hope he or she is going to be all right. How is the communication, or is there certain people that communicate with me to let me know how my child's doing, or if something comes up? I mean, how's that communication with the teacher or the faculty when it comes to that?
Well, I think any student that has more specialized needs, we need to partner with those families. And like I said, I've met with some families here. They're saying, I'd like to have my student come back from private school to come to Edina High School, but they have some learning disabilities, they have dyslexia. The partnership that we can establish, the sooner that we can do that, about what those needs are, and that communication to teachers, communication to counselor, the better we are in terms of being on the same page and supporting the student on a daily basis. So I think there's go-to people that parents and kids can establish if they have some emotional health need, or they have a health concern, or whatever that might be, whether it's a relationship with a nurse, relationship with a social worker, relationship with a counselor. And ultimately that's what we want, so parents know they have go-to people to be able to connect about kind of the status of their child, how they're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a little bit more sensitive question that really pertains to our day and age here in 2019. But security is a real issue within schools. Obviously,
Sure.
Unfortunately, we hear about shootings way too often. I did a social media post, and I had a lot of people ask, well, Tim, if you're going to go talk to the principal, ask about their security plan.
Yeah.
What is your security plan here at Edina High School?
We have a really solid security plan. I had done a lot of work in Bloomington, and so I was able to bring that background and knowledge to Edina High School. The district, in terms of facility upgrades, have made significant improvements about how we do security in the building. Last year, a consultant from the Bloomington Police Department that I worked with consulted with Edina Schools last year and set up more universal security protocols around the district. Hopefully when you came in today, you saw that you checked into the office, dropped off your driver's license, got an ID to come into the building. Electronically, from technology, we have multiple cameras around the building. All of our doors lock electronically once school starts. We have single or double points of entry once school has started, and that's all staffed by adults to be able to come into the building. We have some strong protocols about if an emergency did happen, we practice those safety drills around lockdowns or shelter in place or things like that. So we're prepared. Clearly, I try to tell parents that while we do great security with security staff and admin, we are still built as a school. We are not built as the Pentagon or just like you would hope that Target does good security, that your local grocery store does good security. We are still a public entity. We want to have a welcoming environment, but we have really strong safety protocols here for schools, for our students. And actually, we've worked with our students a lot on culture as well, having them understand that they are part of the equation when it comes to school security, about doors that they open, exits that they go out, communication to us if something is going on. And that happens on a regular basis when you build trust with students. They let us know when something's going on. It doesn't have to be as intense as the idea of a school shooter or something like that. But if they tell us that, my friend is kind of in crisis right now today, I'm concerned about them, can you reach out to them? I don't want them to know I'm sort of telling they had an issue. And so that trust that you build with students gets us information to be able to respond to situations before they even happen.
All right, so this is my last question. Me being an entrepreneur, owning multiple different businesses, entrepreneurship it just runs through my blood. I feel like with the internet and the way the world is changing so fast that a lot of these young people are thinking about entrepreneurship, unlike I feel like me or you did back when we were in high school. It just was like a word and you didn't even know what it was really. Yeah. And now it's like the word, and everybody feels like they can do their thing, and they're their own person, and I feel like that can be really confusing in today's environment because, the system still says go get your college degree, go get your master's degree, and then get a job. But yet with the internet and with, entrepreneurs like me out there on the internet, it's confusing because the message is, well, maybe you don't need all that. You just need the right skills to get the job done. So what are you seeing, or how do you feel about that as students try to evolve and make that decision? Is college right for me? Is it not right for me? If I go to college, what's my path going to be? Because I feel like it's getting a little bit more cloudy these days.
There's a great book by a guy named David Conley who wrote a book called College Knowledge. And he really talks about skills. And what he does emphasize is the same skills, the same enduring skills that you need to develop to be successful in college are those same skills that help you be successful in the workforce, whatever that might be. And it's those enduring skills around relationships, communication, inquiry, problem solving, that will be needed for successful people regardless of career field. So we're really trying to talk a lot about pathways to graduation and pathways after high school as opposed to a pipeline, one size fits all. So I would want a student to say, I'm going to graduate from high school and I'm going to go to Dartmouth and I'm going to follow this path and get my master's degree and go into the medical industry, whatever that might be. But I also want another student that says the right fit for me is to get a vocational degree or to go into radio or go into communications and be able to start my path right away. So ultimately, the preparation that we give our students here should have them be ready for the next step in their life, whatever that path might be. So ultimately, students over time, as they grow, they're not ready to make a decision about who they are or exactly what their career path will be. I went to college for pre-med. Okay. So here I am. I'm the principal at Edina High School.
Right.
I am not a doctor. Right. So I think some of those things happen and change over time. And I think that can change over the high school career. Somebody might come into high school saying, I'm really interested in engineering and I want to take as many pre-engineering classes. They're into it and maybe they make a relationship with a world history teacher and they're like, oh my gosh, I've never found history so fascinating. So I'm going to go further in that area. So sometimes a career path, an area of study, that path changes based on relationships, connections that students make over time.
So I just want to get clear because I think that if a child or a high school student or whatnot is listening to this, I just want your opinion. Do you feel that it's more important to have the skills or to have the degrees to get to where you want to go?
Well, ultimately, it is always about skills. How you gain those skills can come through further study, college education. I would say that it is my expectation that 100% of students from Edina High School continue with post-secondary education. 100%. And whether that's you're getting vocational training to be an electrician, or you're going pre-med, or you're going to study humanities, or you want to become a minister, whatever that might be, continuous, ongoing education in some field. And that could be book education, but it also could be intern education, practical education. All of our students cannot just say the high school diploma is enough. Right. They have to continue to learn and continue to study after high school.
Well, those are all my questions, but I want to give you a shot at throwing anything out there that you want to talk about that maybe I missed or I didn't ask.
I don't know what to add. There's a lot of a lot of projects going on at Edina High School. Like I said, that two-prong approach about that tradition of excellence that we maintain, but continuing to stimulate progress and grow as a school. Some of the areas of growth that we've had, like I said, intervention programming, personalized learning is a piece that we're looking at. We're also looking right now at around the word accommodations. So accommodations sometimes happen when a student has an IEP or a 504. The accommodation of, let's say, you needed glasses. There's a simple one. You needed glasses so you can see the board. That's an accommodation to remove a barrier for a student to learn. We're talking about that as a school, about being more systemic, about what kind of things should be offered to all students, or certainly to any student that makes this request, versus needing that formal IEP or 504. So it's a really good conversation right now about what our core values are, what we believe in. Do we believe in the learning more than the time? So it's a great conversation to take us to the next level.
That's awesome. Andy, you know what? It's just an honor to have you today. I think that parents and students and everybody that listens to this interview is going to get a heck of a lot out of it. So thank you very much.
Thanks. And come to Edina High School. If you have any questions for me, make sure you visit us. You'll be impressed. It's a great place.